We've dealt with bit depth, now on to compression and data rate. These two things are very important as they have a direct and pronounced impact on the visible quality of the final image. We use compression to make our footage files take on a practical file size for final delivery. We can't put a feature film up to stream if it's encoded in uncompressed video and is roughly 6 terabytes. We need to strike a balance between file size and the quality of our image. In a perfect world, we'd always get 10 or 12-bit footage to work with, but we can receive heavily compressed material sometimes. It's not ideal, and I'd recommend this only as a last resort, or if the client has shot on a DSLR that's not a GH5 or Sony AS7 II. Accepting compressed 8-bit footage means that we probably won't be able to use the HSL qualifier to get very accurate results. Now, as I mentioned in the lecture on bit depth, the number of colours we have to work with has a strong impact on how accurate our secondaries can be. Take this HSL qualification on the grass, for example. It's actually very accurate indeed. A similar qualification on this heavily compressed 8-bit file looks awful. We can actually see the blocky shapes made by high levels of compression here. Now, this is a dual problem. This is a result of, yes, 8-bit footage, but also extremely high compression. It's possible to get 8-bit footage, which is a lot better than this, but it still produces these kind of jagged edges when you're keying. And this is the real practical difference that this makes. The difference between this, which is beautiful, and this, which is awful to work with. The attribute curves might fare a little better if we're gentle, but for the most part we're going to want to get the most mileage out of our primary tools and power windows when working on H.264 material or any other compressed 8-bit material. Make this clear up front and manage your client's expectations, especially if they're the type to fall in love with their Canon 5D. A lot can be done with DSLR cameras, but they undeniably have their limitations. If we work with very heavily compressed material, then we begin to see compression artifacts whilst we're working. These can manifest as blocks of colour, which can be exposed when we stretch out our contrast or when we try and pull a secondary qualification. These are unsightly and interfere with a lot of our secondary work. It's a great big block of colour and thus is very obvious when acted on by a qualification. Moving on to our final delivery, it's important to understand something called bitrate. This is a measure of how compressed our footage is at the point of export. A lower bitrate indicates more compressed footage and lower quality final image. In most cases, you'll be delivering a high quality intermediate codec, but sometimes you'll do the final export right from Resolve. In this case, you're typically going to be delivering H.264, and you can manually set the bitrate in Resolve. I find that 30 megabits per second is a good balance between file size or image quality, and in this case we'd be typing in 30,000 kilobits per second. In general, we want to use the best codecs with the least compression that our storage and workstations can accommodate. It would be great to work entirely with uncompressed video, but that's just not going to happen. It's not the slightest bit practical. So we work predominantly with ProRes and DNX codecs as they provide an excellent balance between relatively little compression and manageable file size as well as real-time performance in the grade. This was a decent enough intro to the notion of compression in video. We'll cover this a bit more later on as we progress into final delivery. When you're ready, click on through to the next lecture.